As we've heard today, and I don't need to tell anyone in the room, volatility is rife, disruption across inbound materials, affecting production, increasing the pressure on the vehicle logistics sector. Inventory levels are low, there's challenges, there's rising costs, and we'll certainly go into a few more of these in detail. But ultimately, there's pressure on vehicle logistics to deliver and get those vehicles to market. Unpredictable production schedules, reduced planning cycles, these are all adding to the mix, not least with driver shortages and a whole myriad of issues and complexities that the market faces right now. Overcoming these now is crucial, but also taking the time to plan for the future as the industry transitions to an exciting and innovative future will be key. So here, to guide us through and to avoid the bottlenecks, lessons learned from the crisis, and what the future of vehicle logistics is set to look like, please welcome on stage, we have Jean-Christophe Deville, Head of Vehicle Logistics at Toyota Motor Europe. We also have Sergio Gutierrez, President and CEO of RPM. Welcome, Sergio. And last but certainly not least, we have Gina Tovar, Managing Director of ICL Europe. Gina, please welcome to the stage.
Thanks. Thank you.
Very well, welcome. And as I said, and I've just promised the audience all the solutions, insights and strategies, so no pressure. Here we go.
Here we go.
I'd like to start with you, JC. You've been in the role at Toyota now for just under a year, relatively new in the game to vehicle logistics. So coming in at a tumultuous time for the industry, what's your experience been so far? And I should say, JC comes from a big manufacturing past. I'll let you delve into that a little bit more. But what's been your experience like so far in finished vehicle logistics and your initial thoughts on the sector?
First, thank you, Richard, for inviting me. As I said, as a newcomer, it's an honor actually to present in front of such a prestigious audience and next to key players of the industry. I said, having been at Toyota for nearly 25 years, but only 1 year in logistics, it's been a real change. So first, quite amazed by the level of engagement of the individuals, my teams, the logistic partners teams, getting through those crises one after one with still the spirit of customer first and how to make it happen. And the next observations may be less positive, but were a bit of a shock coming from the manufacturing side of Toyota with the Toyota production systems in mind, visiting the first hubs and saying, why do we dismantle brand new cars to fit an options and reassemble it probably slower than we could have done in a factory next door, was the first questions to me. There's something strange here. In the actual transportation itself, despite the digitalization, still seeing some of my planners using emails, Excels, phone calls, again saying, shouldn't be that part of the normals, low added value task already eliminated. And the third one on the environment, where in contrast, I've seen the enormous progress that has been done in our factories, but I think probably in the same at our competitors with kind of 60 to 70% of CO2 taken away in the last 8 years. I think in comparisons, what I see in the carbon footprint that I'm responsible for, I see some kind of low-hanging fruit for the next few years, but then what's next? Carbon neutral, carbon zero seems very far. So that would be probably the three observations on the hubs, in the transportation, on the environment that I should see that as not problems, but opportunities clearly for improving, I would say.
I think that's the key, seeing them as opportunities. And as I said at the beginning, I think identifying and overcoming the current issues and challenges that the sector faces, but having that long-term view is going to be crucial. Sergio, I'm going to come to you next. So the European outbound sector isn't short of challenges right now. I mentioned a few. Asset capacity constraints, rising fuel costs, driver shortages, market uncertainty, material supply. Sorry, we're running out of time, but I could go on. Which of these do you foresee having the biggest impact on the sector right now? And I actually believe you've recently conducted a survey, a global survey. So thank you for everyone who's participated in that. But what are the results from that in terms of the immediate impacts?
Yes. Well, first of all, gracias, Ricardo. We decided to say it in Spanish, so it's a little different for having us here. I will say, yes, we survey the community. We obtained close to 1,000 responses. So it was pretty powerful. Interesting enough is that most of the participants were focused either on supplying transportation services or utilizing transportation service providers. So it's pretty solid. So the biggest concern, of course, is the cost of fuel. That was highlighted as the most complex thing because ultimately it's not a component that we can ignore. At the end of the day, we will have to pay it, right? And naturally or unfortunately, we all have to pass this cost through the supply chain, and ultimately, sometimes the owner of the product is the one that ends up paying it. But I will say that in addition to that, personally, what I see is that if we stay focused on the fuel challenge, the way to tackle this opportunity, it might not be just by focusing on who's going to pay the last bill and keep pushing that along the supply chain, but probably is much more about discussing real ways to maximize and create efficiency along the supply chain. So then we collectively at some point can reduce cost and reduce inefficiencies, the so-called empty kilometers or empty mileage in the other side of the world, but it is the same problem. So fuel is the main driver, is the main concern. We all are deciding who's going to pay for it, but I feel that collectively we need to discuss options to reduce the utilization so we can then save cost and impact the less.
Absolutely, and just in time we have the results there for our audience to see from that survey, and it's as a clear indicator, rising fuel costs is the most pressing issue for our audience. That's not to say there is like a myriad of other opportunities there. I'll throw it open to Gina and JC to comment on this as well, your perspectives on the results that have come through.
Well, I think actually this type of, it's not the first time we face this type of issue. And can I do anything about the unit price of the fuel? No. Can my logistic partners do anything about it? No. The parts makers? No. So instead of arguing and wasting time in how do we share the bills, of course we need to share because overall we are together there, but we need to focus on the quantity and the efficiency. We call it gentani in Japanese. That means focusing on the actual consumptions. So if we have 2 hours of meeting, I'd rather have 1.5 hours on how do we optimize the quantities, and then the first 30 minutes on how do we share the burdens, which we have to share. So it's not so much about your problem is not my problem, your problem is my problem on this one, and then let's move on together. So that's part of the philosophy we try to apply every day, and if we would not share that today, I mean, tomorrow, if the logistic partners is not there anymore, I cannot transport my car. So no partners, no cars is our approach in this type of field. So it's not a good news for anybody, but we have to look beyond this type of issues.
And to enable that, I see what Leif mentioned before, data sharing, or not only the costs and the burdens and the problems, but also data as the platform to provide this transparency that we need for the whole supply chain, which is more of really a network, a supply web with many networks interacting. And so the more data we share, the easier is, for example, I don't know, wouldn't it be wonderful if a port, Bremerhaven, Barcelona would know in advance, not only from the last adjacent partner, but before that, well before that, what's coming, am I going to have a bottleneck, when is it going to happen, what can I do to avoid that? And the same for the rest of the LSPs and the OEMs, no? Sharing that data. Of course, we're not, I didn't see any charity on the list. We are companies, we work for profit, but there's still, in my mind, a way to find within these ecosystems, the way to find these profit pools and synergies, collaborations, partnerships. And I mean, there's, enough for everyone, I think, and what better than sharing this data, no, for the better performance of all the people in this supply chain network web.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe sticking with you, Gina, just in terms of foreseeing the current challenges here, perhaps there's a clear path in terms of data sharing being, dare I say, an obvious route to improving, but can these amount of challenges actually be a barrier to progression? Or will they act as a catalyst saying, no, we definitely need to do something and change the status quo?
Absolutely. I think it is a catalyst, not only for this paradigm shift, but also to keep going on the same path that we are with technology and digitization. But I mean, even my in-laws who swore never to have an iPhone, a smartphone, are now even like they're devils doing online banking, which they would never do that. So this openness, these 30 billion endpoints, all of this connectivity at home through mobile work, all of our different technologies we have at home, our Alexas, or routers, intelligent fridges, all of that, for me, on the flip side, opens a big vulnerability and a problem, it makes everything more dangerous in the sense of now we are vulnerable to attacks. We need to again be together and not only share information just for the sake of it, but also be aware that we need cybersecurity. We need to improve that. All LSPs. The supply chain is by nature vulnerable. So no, we are not continuously changing our processes. So it's easy, and if you get in, you can impact many players. Yeah. So I didn't even know that there's something called ransomware as a service, which it's crazy to think, but there's something like that. So that, for me, it's very positive what has happened through COVID and other challenges. But at the same time, we need to increase our cybersecurity awareness globally.
I mean, an open question, is the sector ready for this level of sharing that we're talking about and data sharing? There seems a willingness, an openness, but with increased threat, is the technology, is the platforms there in your experiences?
If I may, I always like the hairy questions, the ones that are probably not often spoken or shared, but are important. Truthfully, after COVID, the pandemic, and then what we're seeing globally with the geopolitical situation, reality is that still today in the automotive industry, we get together and still sometimes we talk about the exact same thing. 3 years ago, we talked about digitization and bringing everything to transparency, and here we are 3 years later talking about the same thing. And as you said, this is not a charity, right? We are here all to make business, but reality is that there's enough product out there that we all can collectively transact. But my personal interpretation is everybody in this room, we all together are here dedicated to autos, either components or finished vehicles, right? And at the end of the day, the only way we can truly put this network to work is if the owner of the product is willing also to allow us to play together. We can play together. We can share as service providers. We can share with everybody here. But when it comes to combine that effort and put it in the hands of the big OEM, if they allowed us to do it, then it'll become efficient. But if they don't allow us to do it because there's still barriers and there's still paradigms, then it's impossible. So it's a real mindset change, the one that we are calling here. In the morning, Jean-Francois talked about the changes. And I was just thinking, and how much that mindset that he's kind of pushing through his network, through his organization, is really finding the way all the way down to the people that we deal on a daily basis, so we can combine better solutions and welcome different things. So personally, I still believe that collectively we got to do a better job and really challenging us and get uncomfortable with these things so we can change the way we do things.
And dare to risk, no? As well. Just do it, no? Stop the... Try and iterate and start small. Slice the elephant and start, moving and trying things and iterating and seeing what works and what not, no? Also a big learning from after the pandemic. I don't know, one of the first meetings we had in my past life was, what can you live without? All departments in that OEM had to just, get rid of things. Let's get lighter and get rid of muda and optimize processes right away. Do you really need to travel? No, you saw that you don't, stuff like that.
You definitely do, and you do need to come
yes,
to all
here.
our conferences.
To Munich.
So you definitely do need to travel and be here. Yeah, sorry.
Only to Munich, yes.
So, JC, you have a rich background in purchasing, manufacturing. So do you see value in greater understanding of the production and product planning when it comes to the vehicle logistics? I think you touched upon it in your kind of opening statements, but let's delve a little bit deeper and, what's that understanding? How's that going to benefit your teams and your operations?
Well, definitely, I think speaking up from what has just been said, and this wish or dream of partnership, coordinations, transparency to each other, as I said, I had the same topic 10 years ago when going to purchasing conferences. And everybody says, I want to do it, and when it's time to do it, nobody wants to open the doors and share. And I think the topic goes beyond the digitalization, which links technically people one to another. But another thing that shocked me when I arrived in the world of logistics is that, okay, we are operational peoples, but why do we give only 3 months of visibility to our partners in our forecast? What about the strategy alignments? If I don't share what I want to do in 2025, how can I expect my logistic partners, my system providers, to invest, to recruit, to understand me? So one of the first things we did was to organize simple webinar and say, okay, we bring the ALP executives who could not travel to each other, and say, okay, this is my plan to 2025. I have very good news to share, but I have also demands and strong challenge. Can you follow me here? Can you follow me there? And I think this lack of strategy alignment is one of the reasons why this nice wish of partnerships remains a wish in many cases, is that maybe we don't dare to give data when they are not robust and precise. And my people were, but beyond 3 months, I don't really know. We have to make a projection. We have to share our vision, let's say. So I think for me, that's the first one. And it's true somehow internally, even within the company, between the manufacturing plant, the logistics hubs, even the dealers, we sometimes have glass walls, not that thick, but that thick. And externally, certainly. So that's one of my homework, I would say, is to break those walls internally, but also externally, and get these logistic strategy discussions nurturing and growing in order for the actual deployment. For me, the digitalization is one of the deployment activities, what we should all agree with and convince each other, if I can say so. Answering to your point, I say very much, I think that starts with sharing the visions, sharing the difficulties, and sharing the plan.
That's a very good point that I have also experienced in my 2 past lives. I didn't see on the list any sales people from OEMs, and wouldn't it be great for them to hear pain points and the other way around so that we can also work together? Exactly what you just said. I was always missing the sales part. Don't give me your beautiful numbers and dream numbers. Give me your real numbers so that my LSPs, being me the logistics part of the OEM, can get ready, as you said, with enough capacity, time, everything.
And I think in return it goes also with the acceptance from the partners that if I give a projection 2025, I'll probably be wrong at some stage. Exactly. It will not be exactly what I would planned. But at least I try to share my views. So don't come later on in 3 years' time and say, you're 2% below or 2% above what you said. It's not the point. The point is, how do we go together there? What's the transformation, the talent, the investment we need? And that's part of this mutual trust. So if we're there for not 1 year or 2 years, but decades, we have to do that. That's a mutual merit. But I think that's what's missing, at least in our area, which we're trying to fix at the moment. So,
if I can add, Rich, I think that we're discussing here is all about flexibility. Yeah, it's all about cooperation. But I think that we collectively need to also open the tunnel vision to a bigger space. I love what you're sharing about sharing your plan, your vision, and where we're going. But I think that we, the service providers, also owe you to tell you not only what we see, and this is just an example, of course, what we see working for this particular OEM. Mm-hmm. We also should be able to say what we see with the entire community, because that's really when we're going to be able to offer efficiencies, offer transparency, offer a better solutions. But sometimes, again, we narrow our vision into so very specific points, and then we actually lose the power of this collective automotive world that we live in. So I think if all the mindset in the OEMs and the automotive industry could have been standardized a little bit, right? And we all were into this sharing of data, communication, transparency, and then really finding solutions, most definitely we could be find ways to be a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get right back to the present now. So Russia-Ukraine impact, along with ongoing material supply bottlenecks, means that we're dealing as an industry with reduced volumes right now. Perhaps a different case for Toyota at the moment, and we maybe allude to that. But how are the vehicle manufacturers? Well, the vehicle manufacturers will want to catch up on demand, and we saw from Helena earlier that the forecast, that demand will grow. If the industry and the sector on the outbound side is struggling right now with capacity and overcoming these challenges, how is it going to cope when those volumes do return? And perhaps I'll start with you, JC, because Toyota's maybe in a unique position here to explain sort of how you've been mitigating that and working through.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow my boss can actually present on the supply chain resilience to fix the vulnerabilities that Gina mentioned. But it's for me good time to come in, because indeed we are one of the few that are on the sales side quite successful. I know it's not. I mean, some of the colleagues are struggling in industry right now, but we have an enormous order bank, and we're struggling to get the cars delivered because we don't produce enough of them. And therefore, the lead time is getting longer, the frustration on the customer side, and a lot of complaints from the sales, from the executive guys to me, which is good news also because it gives the spotlight on how strategic is vehicle logistics and helps me to explain my problem and get the means and the support that I need. Now, this being said, for me, it's back to the discussion we just had, is that the capacity, I will not fix it myself on my own. The driver shortage, I'm not the one so either I share my plan of growth and I try to prepare together with the logistic partners that are ready to follow me, that give me advice in returns and either challenge me back, but so on, but at least we find a way of getting to that point, or I will not make it. So for me, it's about aligning internally, but aligning also externally. And these difficulties should be the catalyst for a more strong coordination and working together. I think sometimes it's the other way around. It tends to put everybody saying, okay, I'll wait for the storm to be over. I think the storm is the best time for us to help each other and get back to a growing cake instead of a shrinking cake. So that's through the daily activities, we're improving, we're sharing, we're suffering the difficulties, but we're also preparing to the next level, being on the resource, on the investment, and on the plan. So again, it's back to where do we expect to be based on those figures that we saw this morning, and what's the solutions behind it more than just pushing the problems to each other's corners.
And expanding on that, I guess we also need not only to collaborate within ourselves and OEMs and LSPs, but also with the public sector, because we can produce as many EVs as we want, but if the infrastructure is not there, it's not going to be good. So we need their help as well in terms of infrastructure, of cybersecurity, regulations, even personnel. Why not make it easier for young people, men and women who want to be drivers, to get a driver's license? The cost is tremendous here in Germany, at least, to get a driver's license. I mean, for my daughter, it's already 3,000, and for a professional truck driver, it's just something they cannot pay, and that's when they, make the decision to do something else. So then again, I guess it's also, there's a need to talk to the public sector, to the governments and all these different bodies that can help, which there are, no, they are there, so we just need to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. So beyond kind of greater communication with the partners and stakeholders, let's delve a little bit more into collaboration. What are some of the solutions that you're seeing, that you're pitching? Are we going to get to a stage of load sharing and things like that? Is that the only kind of way out of this thing, or are we still quite far off?
I don't think that's the only way out, but to give a precise example, in terms of collaboration and future opportunities, one of the biggest challenges that we face is lack of capacity, right? We see this in certain or in certain formats or different formats, but yes, there's certain lack of capacity. And I think that sometimes instead of focusing much more on going through the same standardized or historical sources of capacity, there's a lot of capacity in the market that needs to be developed. That needs to be developed from a quality standpoint so it can supply the service at the right level, with the right commitments, with the right rates, with the right service. But I think that is a good example where we can focus much more on developing that capacity instead of asking for the current service providers to just magically appear more capacity where they don't have it anymore. So the level of investments are different, and the level of accessibility to capacity is different depending on the size of the company. So this is one example that is a reality. There's other solutions out there that, if properly standardized, can still play the game for the big OEMs. So that's one example, that let's put more attention on finding that solution, and if the solution it's being brought to the table, let's use it and welcome it in order to improve on that, because otherwise we're just spinning in circles, right? So this is one real challenge today that we're dealing with, offering these solutions that are not properly accepted in the industry for now.
At the same time, as Peter Drucker said, there's nothing more dangerous than the right answer to the wrong question. So when you're looking for those problems, just try to reframe and do whatever it is necessary so that you are attacking the real, you have the right questions and the real problems you need to solve. Because there's also an abundance of solutions that you don't need, no? I mean, so dialogue and communication and reframing, I think.
Amidst the challenges, as we mentioned, we need to take that long-term view, and JC, you touched upon this again in the beginning. Sustainability is going to be a key driver that reshapes vehicle logistics. Is it possible to prioritize sustainability, keep on track with roadmaps, amidst the rising costs, the challenges that the providers and wider sector faces right now, the uncertainty? Are these two separate pathways, or is there a possibility that sustainability roadmaps could be derailed?
Again, that's probably an area where I'm too new to the field to have a certainty on this one. But for what I've seen so far, some low-hanging fruit for the next few years. For example, we're moving to train. We've connected our UK operation to the French operation to the Czech operation. This is going to take in 7,000 tons a year of CO2 away. It's a good result. Then we're going to keep optimizing that. But once past these ones, we're still not carbon neutral. We are far from carbon zero. And what's the next step? The next step to carbon zero? I haven't seen this, and I don't see a lot of push coming to me from the logistic partner saying, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? I don't see enough in my teams of benchmarking, checking, and searching for those solutions, which we will need. I think, again, I'm sorry to compare, but when I look at what has been done in the factories, and I am sure it's not the only at Toyota, but we've taken 65% of CO2 from the different factories that we're producing in Europe in 8 years' time. So it's possible. It needs some time, it needs some creativity, it needs some thinking, but it's possible. I think in the supply chain, we are late to the agenda. The next generation will not accept that we are late, and we don't do that for the authorities or just for the KPIs. We're doing that because it's an absolute necessity. And I think we're too slow. So here, that's an area where I'm so far disappointed of what we're doing ourselves, what I think the industry doing. I don't think we are really in the agenda that we had this morning seen, 2030, 2035, 2040. I think we have to it's a wake-up call for us.
Yeah, and Gina, coming to you, I mean, digital tools, can they, how can they play a real role in supporting the likes of Toyota and others, reaching these sustainability targets?
Absolutely. In my mind, you would have a platform that could not only tell you where your cars are, or better said, where am I going to have a problem? You don't want to see what's happening with, all your managers, planners, operations. They don't want to see each and every vehicle, but there's exceptions. At the same time, you know that you're going to pay your invoice at the right time and the right amount. Damages, where are my cars damaged? What can I move? What can't I? But ideally, you would have also, as part of this solution, a way to optimize your network and be able to integrate the emissions calculations behind that so that you can make better options and say, okay, I'm gonna save with rail, but it's gonna take way longer. My ETA is going to be affected by so many days, and this is the cost. But I'm really green, so that you can then fine-tune your strategy in a better way because you have the whole transparency. That's what we are aiming to, at ICL at least, to be able to provide all of these modules that can give you all that transparency to make better decisions.
But if I may, Gina, I think I agree with you, but this is a way to optimize the current business models, to show where are the deficiencies. But still, at the end of the day, even though we are perfect in terms of lead time, stagnation, and so on, we're going to move vehicles from place A to place B with some CO2 impact. And I think what we're missing at the moment is the speed and the incentive. And maybe it's going to come from from some taxations. We were talking this morning. I mean, the carbon border adjustment mechanisms might be one that's going to push us to think differently. That's a pity that we have to be beaten by incentives and tax to move on. But these, once we've optimized and we've shown where are the problems, still doesn't fix the actual problem. So where's the technology next generation in terms of transportation means, and where are the prototypes for us to test them and so on? There's somewhere, but I think we're too slow to move on.
And investments, no? You're going to need a bigger budget
sure.
to make your decisions, and LSPs are going to need more money to invest in equipment, as you just mentioned.
In terms of transportation, I mean, that the sustainability challenge, decarbonization and emission of or reduction of pollution in general, it offers a tremendous challenge for example, for all the LSPs. And you're bringing a very good topic. How could you change or replace your entire fleet if you don't have enough volume, if you're not compensated adequately? It really creates a burden. But it also should force us to really tackle the challenge by starting with what we can do today instead of waiting for the LSPs to change everything. What we can do today is reduce empty kilometers. We can do that right now if we share the network, if we really combine the efforts, if we understand where everybody is going and from everywhere that they're coming back. And that will really alleviate the burden, because right now, again, if you look at a big LSP, basically you're asking them, replace your equipment. Once you replace it, business is back to normal. And now we've been in business, or we've been out of normal, or any kind of normality for the last 2 years. There's never gonna be a normal again. So it's a huge burden into the LSPs. So if we could collectively find a way to reduce empty mileage, reduce the impact into the environment, and at the same time keep the business happening, yes, of course, all the asset-heavy oriented organizations are going to be able to change that, but also the ones that are not asset-based will have the opportunity to produce enough to start utilizing better equipment too. So it's a positive cycle. So that's something that we can work right now.
So there is low-hanging fruit there.
Low-hanging fruit doesn't mean
medium
easy.
level.
Yeah, low-hanging fruit, yes, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It requires that we sit at the same table with open agendas, and we really discuss what do you have, what is the problem you're facing, and although low-hanging fruit is being by far the biggest challenge we have ever faced, how do we collectively get together to talk about these things?
Although if you're sharing that data, you will be able to see where are empty capacities and how can I maybe collaborate, two OEMs that are in the same area, maybe they can share something, no? Why not?
Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a few minutes left, so if there are any questions, please do take advantage of our expert panels. So please, there are some microphones roaming around, so don't be shy. I want to take the last couple of few minutes, talk about future vehicle logistics that was touched upon earlier. Again, subscription models having a real impact in the business models of the OEMs, of the car industry kind of moving forward. We've seen growth in online sales, direct delivery, subscription models, mobility as a service solutions. How is this trend going to impact vehicle logistics? And will the business models that serve the industry today be fit for purpose?
It is a very challenging topic. For the big manufacturers of vehicles, the biggest challenge, of course, is to produce in mass and then be able to get to the dealership network and then to the ultimate customer. On the other hand, we have newer players in town that they don't have that level of need, that they're still small, and they are actually trying at all costs to avoid getting into a dealership network. So they're trying to get to the people right there. The challenge is that we utilize the same equipment to move A or B, and unfortunately, the smaller players right now are taking real advantage of this flexibility. So it's going to create at some point certain, like constipation of the congestion of the system, because the new OEMs are growing and they're going directly to the ultimate consumer, while the OEMs are sometimes, not all the times, but some models still fighting for that mass production environment. So it's already a challenge that we're suffering.
Yeah. Final kind of couple of questions. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but Gina, I want to come to you. And we've talked about the digital side of things, the collaboration, but perhaps let's touch upon the human side. What role can that play in overcoming the immediate issues, but driving that change as the industry transitions over the next few years?
Very, very important point. I think digitization is there, everything, assets, but at the end, cars do not get loaded or unloaded from a Ro-Ro or from a rail car with, semi or through conductors or through ships or with androids. You still need people. We are very heavy, human part of the logistics and the supply chain. I think it's important to pay more attention at attracting people, retaining them, promoting them, especially women. Women like logistics, we do, and we're good at that. As Fiona, I don't know where she is now, or your wives, your mothers, it's just make it more attractive, bring more people, and empower the people you have in your companies, your employees, your partners. I think it's, for me, one big, I don't know, it's not an invention, but when the ESG started as such in 2009, for me, it's the perfect combination of having, not only the environmental part of your business, but the social part of it. And, people, just caring about people and having, that goes, if you embrace ESG as a company, it's proven that your numbers are better, people like you more, people want to work for you. So for me, it's a win-win, and, we just need to make it more attractive and easier so they come to us.
Yeah, great. And I certainly like the idea of promotion, so that's something I'll be raising with my boss.
Promotion.
But I've already run over time, but I'm going to take the last moments, just final comments. So JC, I'll come to you. Final thoughts on where we're at right now, where we're going, something positive amidst the uncertainty.
Okay, thank you. It's difficult to summarize, but again, just based on my experience, it's a fantastic time to be, I think, in logistic. There's such a transformations, being on the technology, being on the human asset. I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime transformation, so that's super exciting. And all of those topics we've been mentioning, it needs some strategy thinking and then some hands-on activities, a mutual trust to make it happen. And I think if we get there, the prospects are brilliant. That's really, for me, I take this as a super good timing to be in with the spotlight of everybody, from the customers, from the executives, from the authorities. So that's probably the best time to be in. That's what I feel, joining the group.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that's probably a perfect note to end on. So full of opportunity, full of optimism, a great time to be in logistics and vehicle logistics, even though when you're working on a Saturday at midnight, it doesn't feel like that.
No.
Trying to source the next semiconductor. But there we go. So thank you very much to my panel. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause, please.